Welcome, my friends. It is Tuesday, the 29th day of November, 2011, and you are watching another transmission of Infowars Nightly News brought to you by PrisonPlanet.tv and InfoWarsNews.com. Now, we have Andrew Griffin joining us coming up in the interview segment tonight. The federal government is now not just labeling returning veterans as the #1 potential terrorist or gun owners as terrorists, but now people that investigate government-sponsored terror, namely Oklahoma City investigators. So we'll talk to the reporter coming up in the second half of tonight's transmission. We also sent our crew to the Get Motivated conference yesterday that Colin Powell and General McChrystal and others were attending. It's very cheap to get in. It's basically, from our research, just an establishment brainwashing forum. And somebody tagged, and we sent our reporters out there, it looks like poster board. They stuck it up on there. Somebody tagged the one of the billboards here in Austin, but this is a brainwashing event that goes on all over the country. Our reporters were out there. We'll also show you the tagged with truth billboard that well, somebody out there is upset about Colin Powell lying about WMDs knowingly, and Giuliani covering up what happened on 9/11, and McChrystal covering up the murder of Pat Tillman and getting caught. That's why the billboard says McChrystal 4040. We were questioning, why does it say 40? And we thought, look up Pat Tillman. That's Pat Tillman's number is 40. And there's been some new information come out on that as well. But first, let's get into the continued saga of the new military funding for 2012, the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. And when this first came out last week, Ron Paul talked about it, Rand Paul talked about it, the ACLU did their analysis, and it said citizens can be arrested anywhere in the U.S. They've already said citizens can be killed. I mean, you saw Anwar al-Awlaki as they set that precedent without a trial, without a warrant. They don't want the intelligence, though, of course, because they know it's all staged. And the first thing we saw happen was propaganda on mainstream media and by bloggers saying, hey, it says citizens are exempt. But then another section that we pointed out says, unless the government says so. Oh, citizens are exempt unless we say, fingers crossed. So it's all there. And we've got a compilation of the McCain of Hanoi Hilton fame who turned on his buddies and sold them out. That's the truth. He's not a hero. He's a coward. Versus Rand Paul, the constitutional stalwart. But then we have another clip that I didn't even know existed. I was on RT today just a few hours ago, and I was coming on to talk about this, and she said, oh, well, here's a clip, Alex. And she played a clip, the reporter did, of Graham. I'd read the quotes of Graham in the Washington Post saying, yes, this is for citizens. It's good. We can lock you up in a dungeon, execute you, torture you, never seen again. That's freedom. I mean, this is actually happening, folks. We told you it was coming. They want to get rid of posse comitatus and then some. So we'll go ahead and play this first exchange, and then we'll get to the RT clip with the actual sponsor of the bill, Lindsey, hi, I'm blackmailed Graham. Here it is.
The father of the Constitution warned, the means of defense against foreign danger historically have become instruments of tyranny at home. Abraham Lincoln had similar thoughts, saying, America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. My well-intentioned colleagues' admonitions in defending provisions of this defense bill, yes, their legislation would arm the military with the authority to detain indefinitely, without due process or trial, people suspected of an association with terrorism. These would include American citizens apprehended on American soil. I want to repeat that. We are talking about people who are merely suspected of terrorism or suspected of committing a crime and have been judged by no court. We are talking about American citizens that could be taken from the United States and sent to a camp at Guantanamo Bay and held indefinite detention. A suspect. We're not talking about someone who has been tried and found guilty. We're talking about someone suspected of activities. But some of the things that make you suspicious of terrorism are having food, having more than 7 days of food, missing fingers on your hand, having ammunition, having weatherproofed ammunition, having several guns at your house. Is that enough? Are you willing to sacrifice your freedom for liberty? I would argue that we should strike these detainee provisions from this bill because we are giving up our liberty. We are giving up the constitutional right to have due process before we're sent to a prison. This is very...
By the way, he's talking about public FBI manuals that have come out. In one case that he mentioned, Arkansas, a few years ago, that we actually published and broke, where barber shops, tattoo parlors, gun shops, hardware stores, they said in rural Arkansas, and it turned out it was all over the country, but the first FBI alert memo pamphlet we got was out of Arkansas, was if people had burns on their hands or missing fingers. Now, I know a lot of you out there might not have grown up around a farm or known any farmers, but I'd say about 20% of farmers are missing fingers, folks. And they got burns all over their hands. I mean, these people work all day outside. Auto mechanics, I mean, what do you think's going on here? People that work in factories. Wearing blue jeans, sunglasses, cell phones, having a camera. You always hear about people getting arrested. It's almost always architecture students taking photos of bridges. I was at the Golden Gate a few years ago taking video, and I saw cops looking at me, and I just bugged my eyes out at them. It's all about us being the terrorist. And remember the Homeland Security documents. It's all about returning vets, gun owners, libertarians. Nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda's been given control, of course, of Libya. Now they're globalist. Our government, the criminals, are sending them into Syria. But we're supposed to just ignore that. Now we're going to go to McCain here, where he salivates over, this is designed to protect our service people. You must be against them. It's always about the troops. Well, funny, the majority of donations for the military in the last presidential campaign and this one, from both parties combined, Ron Paul gets more than all of the presidential candidates, both parties combined. Ron Paul. So again, stop trying to always use the military to make yourself look like a big hero. You're talking about turning the military loose on the American people like Caesar did, like Hitler did. You are the anti-gun, anti-America traitor. You've always been. You're part of the Keating Five, McCain. You're an untouchable crook. Let's go ahead and go to that clip. Here is the sniveling slimeball.
Under the provisions, would it be possible that an American citizen then could be declared an enemy combatant and sent to Guantanamo Bay and detained indefinitely?
I think that as long as that individual, no matter who they are, if they pose a threat to the security of the United States of America, should not be allowed to continue that threat. And I think that's the majority of American public opinion, especially in light of the facts that I continue to repeat to the senator from Kentucky. 27% of detainees who were released got back in the fight and were responsible for the deaths of Americans. We need to take every step necessary to prevent that from happening. That's for the safety and security of the men and women who are out there putting their lives on the line in our armed services. Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
All right.
Or yield the floor.
I mean, this is just completely made up. Guantanamo Bay is a base where they grab innocent people generally, train them to be double agents, and then go start wars around the world. Al-Qaeda was created by the big banks that control our government through the CIA on record in 1979. But he plays on people's ignorance. Now, remember, just last week and over the weekend, there was the big contrived controversy that this didn't affect U.S. citizens. That's a classic military tactic to just deny an assault's happening. Conspiracy theory doesn't affect you. Because as one congressman wrote, we covered this last night, I'm going to cover it again here, I'm going to cover it over and over again. Speaking to the Grand Rapids Press, Congressman Justin Amash said that citizens are secretly arrested and held indefinitely under this, and that the bill is carefully crafted to mislead the public that that is not the case. Note that it does not preclude U.S. citizens from being directly and detained indefinitely without charge or trial. It simply makes such detention discretionary. And folks, remember how criminal these people are. Within minutes of our article going up, they had operatives hitting the site with military and government IP addresses. Within minutes. with the lying, deceptive section of the bill putting it in there. They were ready. They want this. They want to be in the streets of America. They want to take your pension funds. They want to crack down. They want to arrest political dissidents. They want a red terror in America. These are criminals. These are terrorists. These are enemies. And those aren't just words. We're in danger. Do you understand what happened in Nazi Germany and other tyrannical countries is now about to happen here? They've built this whole system. They've already stolen all the bank accounts and pension funds. They just haven't let you know that yet. They've already sold the derivatives to infinity. It's impossible to pay it back. We don't owe it. They're announcing global dictatorship of the banks. They're going to try to implement this through the media. Notice they're pushing euthanasia now, secret arrest, torture, death. They're just overthrowing everything. Tomorrow we're going to cover, because it just broke, in the new border legislation, it allows total GMO, harmonization of all the laws of Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. I mean, it's all happening right now. The globalists have hit jump warp. I mean, they have just warped. All right, let's go ahead and go to this RT clip, because this is a clip I wasn't aware of that I mentioned, of Lindsey Graham. I saw his quote saying, yeah, it's for Americans, so what? The whole world's a battlefield Earth. And they go on to say, we're going to use Northcom. They've already been doing it. They're already federalizing your police. They've already got CIA in your local towns. They ship the drugs into your town. These people are so criminal. They're not Americans. They are a criminal takeover army. This is espionage. This is sabotage. This is infiltration. Let's go ahead and go to the next clip.
So why don't I play something for you from one of the bill's backers, Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. This is what he said on the Senate floor a few weeks ago.
1032, the military custody provision, which has waivers and a lot of flexibility, doesn't apply to American citizens. 1031, the statement of authority to detain, does apply to American citizens, and it designates the world as the battlefield, including the homeland.
The battlefield, says Senator Graham, is right here in your front yard.
In your front yard. I mean, and you notice in a military tactic, they say it isn't in there. Alex Jones, Ron Paul are liars last week while they're trying to pass the bill. It doesn't exist. They're conspiracy theorists. They're liars, the news said. It's not true. They would never do that. And as the public learned and found out about the other subsection, they went, okay, it's there, big deal. And Graham was already doing it before that. Because, again, the psychological warfare tactic is very simple. They'd rather have a debate about whether it's true or not, rather than have a debate of, do we want this? It doesn't matter if McCain, by the way, says a majority of Americans like this. A majority of Americans don't know their head from a hole in the ground. They don't know their fingers from their toes. I mean, literally. They know how to act trendy, and that's about it. But just because a bunch of slobbering fluoride heads just begging to be abused by corruption don't know what's going on doesn't mean I have to bend over. You see, in a republic, the minority's rights are guaranteed as well as the majority. And just because you get 51% of people saying, let's arrest this group or arrest that group, just because you get a bunch of idiots on board saying, take my rights, rip me off, it doesn't mean that the government can do it. See, pure democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. We're a republic. Big difference. But they are bold. I mean, they are bold. Moving along now, here is, we've got a guest coming up later dealing with this. Fusion Center documents label OKC bombing investigators as terrorists. We got a guest coming on about that. And again, antiwar.com, milquetoast libertarian website. You're terrorist. Everybody's terrorist. It's in the domestic terrorism section. It just shows how incredibly dangerous these people are that run our government. They are criminal hijackers, so of course they want to start restricting political speech because they know we're exposing them. I mean, 60 Minutes came out and said, yeah, most of the Congress is insider trading and giving companies they invest in special contracts. It's totally illegal. And the Congress came out and said, we're allowed to do that. You're not. And again, I know I keep going back to that over and over and over and over again. But these are lawless crooks. We're in a lot of trouble. And only admitting that